Sometimes the most compelling character has the sharpest edge to their motive and personality. While the aspects of what makes a character edgy can vary, an edgy character in a fighting game can generally be identified pretty easily. They use ruthless attacks that show no mercy, rarely talk in exchange for just cold stares and crossed arms, or dress in some sort of dark aesthetic, figuratively or literally. Fighting game characters don't need to fit all three categories to be the edgy bad boys and girls that players love, but the more boxes they check, the more outrageous they can get, which is what I'm going to discuss, suggested by plenty of viewers. I'll be judging these edgy fighting game characters on moves, appearance, and that oh so dark and maybe even tragic backstory, and since the edge is so popular among fighting games, one character per series of origin. Now it's time to sharpen my top 10 edgiest fighting game characters. Number 10, Jetta from Darkstalkers. Darkstalkers has the aesthetic of edgy in some places, but I feel the edginess was balanced well with a lot of the silliness in the games. 1 minute Lord Raptor is creating bone blades, the next he's turning his opponent into a basketball to slam dunk them. However, one character that trends more towards the darker aspects of his character over the goofy ones is final boss Jetta Doma. His main way of fighting is severing his limbs to use his blood as a weapon. It's pretty hardcore, but not too bad for him since they regenerate like a second later. He also has a scythe built into his body that he can either use like a reaper or just keep attached to himself as he spins it around inside of you while laughing maniacally. His opponent must have told him a really good joke before he did that attack, since he sounds absolutely giddy. Despite mostly being made of blades, the blood part is still the most brutal aspect of his character. My favorite attack is still when he makes you sign a blood contract with all of your blood. But he doesn't just throw you into the contract, he drags you across the ground multiple times, slams you into the contract, and then takes part of your soul. I discussed Jetta in both my blood manipulation and fighting game antagonist lists, and to summarize his backstory, he's a noble demon who wants to create a new world since the current one has too much fighting. He's too high and mighty for all of it and needs to cleanse it. And he'll start all of it by making this really freaky looking giant fetus. It's less edgy and more disturbing, but it still backs up that he's a force that you do not want to mess with. Number 9, Genjuro from Samurai Showdown. The first Samurai Showdown game may have had violence and killing, but I feel like every character had some goofy or lighthearted aspect to them to balance it out. Between your kabuki guy, American Ninja dude with a dog, and laid-back protagonist who just wants to drink sake all day, it was a pretty chill roster. When Samurai Showdown 2 rolled around, SNK decided to add a serious character to rival the cool protagonist Haomaru, and he was an instant classic for all future games. Enter Genjuro. He loves to fight, just like most of the roster, only he enjoys the brutality and death aspects of the fight the most. He has the mindset that power is the absolute goal, and the weak don't deserve to live. He has a much different philosophy than what his old training partner Haomaru had, which was just, hey man, let's have fun, why you gotta be so grumpy? Genjuro was kicked out of the school where they trained since the whole kill the weak, ultimate power viewpoint was a bit too much of a red flag for Master Nicotine, so on top of his more violent than usual nature, now he wanted to kill his rival Haomaru since he viewed his way of the samurai foolish. Hey, if you don't think Genjuro's way, then you have no right to live. His sword swings certainly have some extra force behind them with the intent to kill, but he balances it out a bit with the graceful Hanafuda cards during his attacks. The cards make it feel like he has a soft side hiding somewhere, until you look at his in-game lines about how he is hell-bent on killing Haomaru, or the even more intimidating line of, "This fiend will have your butt." I know I highlighted that line in my fighting game samurai video, but Genjuro's most iconic phrase should never be forgotten. Number 8, Terumi from BlazBlue. I was initially going to put Ragna as the main BlazBlue rep on this list, since he wants to be the Grim Reaper and takes your soul with a scythe for an astral finish, and it's all cool and stuff, but friend of the channel S Flamenco said, nah, try something else. He pointed out to me that the joke of Ragna's character is that he appears to be this dark and edgy dude, but when you talk to him, he's a nice guy. He subverts your expectations. However, Flamenco suggested Terumi for the Blaze Blue spot, and I was like, oh yeah, the villain is super edgy. Terumi initially inhabited the body called Hazama, who was edgy and dapper. Thanks to plot stuff, Terumi's form was eventually awakened and split from Hazama's body, and then they had another third separate form that existed on its own. It gets confusing, but to just look at Terumi, he's more straightforward when it comes to violence compared to his smooth-talking counterpart. He gets his power through hatred, so he tries to cause that by being absolutely brutal towards his opponents. He has magic snake attacks, but sometimes he finds more enjoyment out of just bashing their heads into the ground with some old-fashioned physical force. And of course, he laughs at the pain that he causes, because what else are you gonna do? Feel sorry for hurting someone? Not with this edge, or this edge. He loves his knives. Finally, I like his edgy manner of dress. The cloak shades enough of his face to make him mysterious, but also allows you to see a good portion of his up-to-no-good facial expression. Plus, he pulls off orange well. You don't see enough orange outfits in fighting games. There's not even an orange ninja in Mortal Kombat. Good on you, Terumi. Number 7. Carmine from Under Night in Birth. Carmine is a blood manipulator, and he'll make sure you know it. Some of the other characters on this list have some nuance to their edgy look. You don't always know if they're going to be purely edgy based on their style, or just a bit shy when you get to know them. Carmine, though, just looking at his character portrait tells you everything you need to know about him. While blood manipulation sounds super edgy, looking at other blood manipulators in fighting games, some of them have a finesse or personality that puts them below others in their universe on the edgy scale. Even Jeddah kept his blood manipulation in his pocket for the most part. He took it out when he needed to, but otherwise he kept his composure. Turn to Carmine, and he brings new meaning to blood on your hands. The blood's almost stained the entirety of his arms. Now I understand why people think Sub-Zero having frozen arms was a bit too much sometimes. And his eyes are crimson. Vizine's not gonna fix that. Carmine's personality backs up his look, as he likes to work alone, not because he prefers peace and quiet, but because he feels that working with others makes you soft. His only view of strength is fighting solo and as violently as you can. To best summarize Carmine is an audio clip from Twitch streamer and friend of the channel, Corgian, who had this to say about Carmine during one of his streams.
He's not like Carmine where he's like, I'm gonna f***ing eat razor blades. I don't need anyone other than myself. I'm a winner. I am the alpha male. Everyone else is weak and stupid.
Number 6. Noob Saibot from Mortal Kombat. While Noob definitely had edge in the original timeline, I think he fully realized it in the rebooted 2011 timeline. He was always shrouded in shadows, but the Black Reaper hood and sharper points on his mask in Mortal Kombat 9 definitely added to his edge factor. Besides just using brutality, he fights with the shadows, specifically this shadow. His Shadow Man buddy Saibot is the personification of his shadow powers and can be used as projectiles or in his close-up combos. He doesn't use the shadows to bring himself closer to you, he uses himself to bring the shadows closer to you. He had the shadow attacks in his original playable moveset, but they felt complete in Mortal Kombat 9. Even his backstory has some over-the-top edge. After being killed by Scorpion as revenge for Noob killing him, and being framed for killing Scorpion's family when he was known as Bi-Han, aka the Elder Sub-Zero, Necromancer Quan Chi bathed Bi-Han's soul in shadow and revived him as a wraith with shadow and portal powers. However, when updating his character for Mortal Kombat 11, NetherRealm Studios thought, how do we make him more edgy? Well, they gave him a sickle, a slew of new masks that Scarecrow wishes he had, and he went from the cold yet still human voice to a voice that sounds like he heavily sandpapered his throat to achieve that Dr. Claw tone.
Return to your mother's arms.
She's dead.
Also, like everything he says is about how his opponent is going to die, or how their family is going to die, or how people close to them are going to die, or how any of those parties have died. A lot of death for him.
You have no family.
Yes, I am an orphan, Bi-Han.
Then who will mourn you?
They really turned the volume to 11 and then tore the knob off when increasing the edge on Noob. The voice was a bit silly when compared to his previous voice, but the sickle fit well with his undead theme, making him feel even more like a Grim Reaper with that hood. And the mask selection did let you choose how edgy you wanted to be. Do you just want a slight edge with a more typical ninja mask, or do you want to go all out with a skull or ghoul mask? Or do you want to show that even seeing is too edgy for you by covering everything with no spaces for any of your face? Are there even air holes on that mask? Well, I guess you're undead, so seeing and breathing are too overrated for you. Number 5. Raven from Guilty Gear. Raven died many centuries ago, but woke up immortal. After growing bored of living for a while, he met the mysterious villain of the Guilty Gear universe known as That Man and gained a new purpose in life. He now serves That Man, but Raven isn't a bad guy per se. He just loves to find new ways to experience pain due to his long life and inability to die, so he thinks it's only right to return the favor of pain with his pointy bits. His main method of fighting is with the needles on his fingers. While they're good for some old-fashioned stabbing, they can be used to manipulate the time around his opponent briefly when activating the magic in them. He also has stretching powers, which doesn't seem to be involved with any magic of sorts. He's just dislocating his limbs because normal pain is nothing to him anymore. His outfit also helps him fight, as he can use his cloak to glide across the screen like the bird he's named after, and he has feather effects on some moves too. I can't think of a better reason he's called Raven, unless he's a big fan of Teen Titans. While his style of dress is edgy, the aesthetics around him when he's not on the battlefield have an even darker tone. He always manages to stand right in front of wherever the moon is hanging out when he does his dramatic intros and outros. The shadow always manages to hit him in a way that makes him look super cool and a bit creepy, or the shadow somehow finds him right when he's about to pull off his finishing move. He's like, alright, enough of this well-lit arena, bring on my aesthetic. Number 4. Oni from Street Fighter. Street Fighter gets over the top with many of its elements, but I never really felt like they pushed the edge button too often. In terms of characters you'd expect to be edgy, the villains generally felt campy in a good way, and some of the more brooding characters like Remy never really had much of a dark side, so I don't turn to them for the edge. Well, except for Juri, she is pretty edgy. It was hard not to make her the Street Fighter rep, but thinking about it, Akuma has always felt like the edgy Ryu, utilizing a similar Ansatsu Kenshoto style moveset as him, only with more ruthless versions of Ryu's attacks and some new ones, and a demon-like aura. They're somewhat different characters, but interesting parallels. You have Ryu, the clear-cut protagonist who has no intent of harming anyone, and just wants to become the best fighter through fair and square training and not having emotions. And then you have his uncle Akuma, who embraced the Satsui no Hado, a dark energy that is built up by a fighter's intent to win, but holds back their morality, giving them the intent to kill any strong opponent. With that logic, Ryu could technically be edgy Ryu, since he was also susceptible to succumbing to the dark Hado energy, but considering Ryu overcame it and Akuma is drinking that Satsui no Hado smoothie all day, every day, Akuma definitely has the edge in this comparison. To simplify it, he's like Ryu, but he kills depending on the situation. However, could Capcom make Akuma even edgier? The Street Fighter IV Arcade Edition update answered that with a resounding yes. Just as Ryu gets a viciousness boost as evil Ryu, Akuma turns into the murderous Oni when the full effects of the Satsui no Hado take over Akuma's mind and body. When Akuma transforms into Oni, all bets are off. The ferociousness in each hit is earthquaking. He no longer cares if he's killing anyone he knows, if they're honorable, if they're innocent. Regular Akuma at least showed human decency from time to time, like when he spared Gen after learning he was terminally ill and saw no honor in killing a sick old man, or the Street Fighter Alpha artwork where we see him giving food to a little boy. What bad guy gives food to a hungry child? Just ignore the other things he's done. However, Oni starts a fight by saying he'll grind you to dust by the end of this match. Regular Kuma just says he'll teach you the meaning of pain and nothing beyond that. Swell guy, I love a good lesson. Oni keeps his promise that he made at the beginning of the match by taking his opponent after they've been defeated and killing them off to the side in the most PG way possible. You would think he needs to murder or else he'll die, but truly he just doesn't think the weak deserve to live, or the strong deserve to live. Really the only person that deserves to live is Oni. Number 3, Jin from Tekken. If you want to be a Tekken protagonist, you have to have some edge to you, or at least pointy hair. This choice came down to the old versus the new generation. Should it be Kazuya and his pursuit of becoming full-on devil, or Jin and his journey to rid the devil from his system through any means necessary? While Kazuya is essentially on a journey to become more edgy by expanding his devil powers, I think Jin fits the edgy role a bit better since he seems to want to have nothing to do with society and has to fight with himself internally just to prevent even more of the edge from coming out. Kazuya chases the edge while the edge chases Jin, so Jin is just naturally more edgy with his reluctant and uncontrollable devil form that he's actively trying to expel. Jin is still a good guy, but he is so jaded by his grandfather betraying him and his father trying to kill him to get his devil power and the rest of the world just sucking that he talks to no one. He just wants to fight and move on, but he makes sure to remind you that he's too cool for all of this by calling you pathetic or something like that when you lose. Though when he feels like getting a bit more edgy, and by feels I mean is forced to by his internal devil powers, he can get vicious with his attacks. He also grows wings and horns. He had the bad boy look down with the rest of his aesthetic already, but the devil form just confirms that the edge on Jin can get even sharper. I mean, normal Jin is still capable of doing bad things. Just look at the plotline of Tekken 6, but when his devil side comes out to play, you'll have more to worry about than just him insulting you while you're down. Number 2, Iori Yagami from King of Fighters. When protagonist Kyo and rival Iori were introduced as the original jack-of-all-trades characters for the King of Fighters franchise, they had those mid-90s edgy bad boy looks. Kyo may have had that edge with his black coat and blazing attacks, but he still showed standard mercy during a fight. Iori, on the other hand, hated all people and had a very similar moveset to Kyo, only his fire was darker and meaner, or at least more purple. Iori favors brutality more. He won't kill you when he has his state of mind, but he'll favor violence over flashy style, though his attacks still are pretty. Iori will burn you with his fire just like Kyo will, but first he'll beat the crap out of you, and not with his fist, but with his claws. They're standard human hands, but he is so edgy that he needs to be more feral with his hand motions. At one point, he even got his flame ability stolen, so he just had to rely on the vicious claw slashes as his main line of attack in some games. He gets more violent if he's taken over by his Orochi blood, which makes him unhinged and bloodthirsty. Regular Iori is just violent because that's how he thinks he's gonna win, but Orochi Iori is violent because that's all his mind thinks about when he loses control. As discussed in some of my previous videos, his bloodline was involved with worshipping and reviving an ancient demon snake man called Orochi, who has mind control powers over his family, so he has this crazy form that will go for the jugular more when awakened. Though I simply prefer standard Iori in this case. When there's a legitimate evil, he'll play the role of anti-hero or even just ally, but otherwise, he doesn't want anything to do with you. Remember, in one of the King of Fighters anime, Iori indirectly started a conflict because he knocked over a little girl when pushing through a crowd and refused to apologize. Jeez man, just cause you're the edgy guy doesn't mean you have to be rude. Still, if you're not set to fight with him or start a fight with him, he's not going to intentionally bother you. He'll practice his guitar, he'll give a cat milk, you know, he'll do normal things when he's not in a fight. For number 1, I went with a character that is more edge than human. Sometimes he's not even human to begin with. Number 1, Nightmare from Soul Calibur. Where to start with for Nightmare? His appearance holds a lot of edginess. It varies between games, but the consistent parts are the red glowing eyes, sharp armor, giant monster hand, and of course that massive blade, showing his edge is not just sharp figuratively. Also the name, he calls himself Nightmare. He really lays it on hard that he's supposed to be terrifying. He's called the Azure Knight too, but he prefers to introduce himself as Nightmare since that's more intimidating and that's all he wants to be. He doesn't care what color his armor is. As for his motives, death and destruction. He's meant to take souls for the Sword of Chaos, Soul Edge. The more souls he gets, the stronger Soul Edge gets. And he gets those souls by killing, leaving behind a trail of chaos, which is perfect for his ultimate goal. With Nightmare's first appearance in either timeline, he took over the body of the initially mischievous knight Siegfried and completely overrode Siegfried's mind. Despite adopting some of Siegfried's attacks, Nightmare was completely autonomous from Siegfried, only existing to fulfill his own goals. Siegfried has more skilled sword moves, while Nightmare mostly swings his sword with no true technique, knowing it's a large sharp object that will hurt anything due to its aforementioned largeness and sharpness. He can even create a horse out of pure chaos and nightmares. Nightmare had 2 other hosts. The lesser host was in Soul Calibur 5 with Graf Dumas, who was implied to be Dad of the Year Raphael. Nothing too revolutionary from this Nightmare, but I liked that his super move was just a giant whack on the head from his big demon blade. The character who took the mantle of Nightmare between the previous 2 Nightmares was the living embodiment of Soul Edge itself, Inferno. After Siegfried rid Nightmare from his soul, Inferno pulled a "fine, I'll do it myself" and took over Nightmare's empty armor to go around grabbing souls for himself. I like that Inferno was so annoyed by the situation that he just willed Nightmare back to life with the discarded armor. This Nightmare was probably the edgiest since its abdomen was just a void of fire and despair. Also, there's like teeth there. If there was a being just made of edge, it would model itself after Nightmare, the edgy knight that undoubtedly deserves the top spot on this list. Now, what did you think? Which of these edgy fellows did you love, and which ones not discussed deserve some spotlights for their edge? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.